we do have a quorum present today. I believe that we'll have a couple other members joining us in a bit. Just connection issues and different things going on. But first, we have had some kind of a disrupted timeline here for a bit, and our February meeting did not have a quorum, and so the minutes from the January meeting, I believe, was the last ones that Sarah sent out just before the August meeting, but we opted not to approve those. I believe just because it had been so long and since our January meeting, but now we have a quorum, and I think we can go ahead and approve the minutes from January. And I have not heard from Sarah, but I will need to get the minutes from August from her. And then I am thinking that because she has moved, we will need to seek an individual to fill her space on the commission. Is that correct as far as you know, Paul?
We'll have to double check the bylaws, but I believe I think it says something about either being a city resident or I'll double check the bylaws, sir. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. We don't. It does not have to be a city resident.
Okay.
I know because at least for some time Noah was living just outside the city limits and was still able to be a member. But I think if she has moved out of state and at whatever point she is no longer the director of the economic development, it would certainly make sense to have someone who's local and involved here.
Last Thursday, Molly Fitzgerald announced, I think, a date for, and I didn't really.
October 16th, I think.
Okay. Thank you. And
Thank you.
And Molly will be taking over as the director, I believe. So.
Thank you, Joyce. I will reach out to Molly and ask if she would be willing to serve in this position. Because I think having the voice from economic development is an important voice to have, though it's not a requirement for the makeup of the commission. So I've gotten a little bit off track here because of talking about Sarah and our missing August minutes. But if I could have a motion to approve the minutes from way back in January, I would appreciate that.
So moved.
Okay. And I guess I will take minutes since I just realized we need to have minutes taken. So I'll put Paul making a motion and second by Susan. And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. And I see you're driving, Michelle. Thanks for joining us. And pay attention to where you're going.
I want to pull over on the side of the road, Michelle.
So, and then we need to hand things over to Paul. And Paul, we could just make this agenda item a discussion of the multiple developments, I think. So then, although I don't see Mr. Fugate here yet, so whatever, if you want to talk about Woda Cooper or
Sure.
Yui, whichever order you prefer here.
So I'll give everybody a little bit of background, and we do have Joe McCabe. He's with Woda Cooper that is present, so he can speak on that project. I think most of you, since it has been a while since we've really met in earnest, there's been a few projects that I've reported on in the past that the city's been working on with private developers in order to try to get additional affordable housing into the city. There's both of those projects are on the west side of Athens, one of which is on State Route 682 across the street from the main entrance into University Estates on property that's typically, people generally call it the Hope Family Farm. And then there's a second project that the city's been working on with Cornerstone Builders, which is a developer out of Albany, Ohio, in Athens County, to do some affordable housing at University Estates. The first project that we would want to talk about today, Joe McCabe from Woda Cooper is present to talk about. This is a low-income housing tax credit project through Ohio Housing Finance Agency. Woda Cooper is a developer that does this type of product all over the region, all over the Midwest. They did, if I'm not mistaken, Beaumont Green, which is on the far east side of Athens, and they did the renovation housing project for the old Nelsonville High School in Nelsonville, and then I think they have a small project in Albany as well. Joe is here to talk a little bit more detail about it. I can say that just as an update for this commission, Joe and a few others from WODA met with the Disabilities Commission's Development Committee last week. And got their support on the project. They explained all of the design elements that they were incorporating into their project to make sure that it had universal design and met accessibility requirements, especially with their first floor units. And then also they're working on transportation issues since it's on the Athens public transit path or route, excuse me. Joe, do you have anything you want to introduce to the Affordable Housing Commission, or maybe give a little bit more detail? I think you're on mute, Joe. Not yet.
It doesn't show that you're muted through Zoom, but we can't hear you. So maybe your mic is off or something.
Joe, do you want me to talk about the other project while you're trying to figure it out? There's no rush. Okay. So while he's trying to resolve his technical issues, we've all experienced that in the past working with Zoom. The other project, like I said, it's affordable housing, kind of along the routes that this body's been talking about for a while, about how to get housing at certain price points that the market generally doesn't offer, how to get universal design features, how to get different housing styles in the community that typically we don't offer. And the project that we're looking at, it utilizes a recommendation from the Affordable Housing Commission from the report that we provided to City Council last year, which was to look at the TIF model for housing. And so City Council is looking at this right now. We did have it was at City Council committee last week, and I believe it'll be up for first reading tonight. Is that correct, Sarah? Okay. And so what they're looking at doing is about 50 units, townhouse style, market housing. It's not a tax credit project or anything like that. This would be at University Estates on property that is currently was subdivided for large lot single family homes, housing at the $300,000 price point, like we're typically seeing at University Estates. However, this project, the applicant is looking to do a townhouse style, utilizing that TIF for housing to help absorb the cost for the infrastructure, including street, curb, gutter, sidewalk, any of those issues that might be in play, taps, et cetera, and working at a price point so that for the minimum of the first 5 years of the project, any transaction must be held as owner occupied, and a price point opening at $175,000. So like I said, it's not affordable housing like WODA offers with tax credit programs for people of low to moderate income, but it is trying to get housing into the community that we typically don't have available, especially new housing in a townhouse style. So there's shared common walls to make they're more energy efficient. and also we can provide more housing on a smaller space because there's less yard required, side yards and front yards and things like that. So that's moving forward right now. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Do they know when? Do they know when they're going to break, like when they're going to break ground or any kind of completion?
Well, we're still working through. Council still has to approve the TIF agreement, Susan. So that'll be on first reading. So that's going to, assuming that City Council's supportive, that won't be prepared to be signed for at least roughly 45 days. They have not brought forward permits or detailed building plans or anything like that to the city yet because they wanted to make sure that this was resolved first. However, they have been working on that. They've site plans and things like that at the same time. Assuming that this is moving forward, I would anticipate, depending on the weather, that they might have an opportunity to start doing some work this late fall. And then doing, construction in all earnest in spring and summer of next year.
My only other, do they plan on, which you haven't seen all of this, and having a homeowners association, has that been brought into conversation and any kind of structure where it's not too expensive? Some limits on fees.
Yeah, I don't believe they were intending to do a homeowners association. That's a really good question though. I'll double check on that since you're right. Those do have fees that are booked into those. The project would be fee simple. It's not a condominium style. It is fee simple housing. So you're going to, if you buy it, you're buying the land and the walls. But they will have shared walls and shared roofs and things like that. And so there'll be, of course, details in there for how to handle those issues between property owners. But we never talked about a homeowners association, Susan, and I was not anticipating one happening, to your point. But I will double check. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'll let you know if if that comes up. Of course, I'll let this committee know, or this commission know.
Paul, I know you said we don't have detailed plans or anything yet as a city, but if typically townhome styles are multi-level, so we're anticipating multi-level. How does that work in terms of accessibility?
Mm-hmm. So you're right. There'll be generally 2 or 2.5 story buildings. Walk out for some of them walk out to the back because of topography issues up there. What we were expecting is we provided them universal design elements that this commission has already established in that planning document. Expectation that there's a first floor master suite that has ADA bathroom, hallways that are I think we talked about, I want to say 42 inches wide or 48 inches wide. I'm looking at Noah up there. Accessible kitchen. So at a minimum, you've got the first floor is accessible, including a bedroom, and then likely an additional 2 bedrooms. It's like 2 and 3 bedroom units, but we want to make sure that we had master suites on the first floor. So if somebody does have a disability need or an accessibility need, that they can also utilize these, purchase these units and stay in them. We're also working with them make sure that there's, the units have 0 grade entry. That can be an issue as well with topography in those locations. So they're aware of expectations for that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'll follow up with more as it becomes available.
I'm excited that things are moving on multiple projects. Sometimes it feels like we can meet and talk a lot and nothing happens. So I'm excited that we have a couple of things moving forward, and this commission has talked numerous times about the need for housing at multiple price points. the truly affordable low-income housing, plus workforce housing and housing for seniors or retirees. And so I think having things happening that will appeal to different parts of our population is a great thing. So
yeah, I agree. And I, in my opinion, neither of these projects would be to a lot of people. I'm not sure that they would be they wouldn't be very high of high importance if it wasn't for the Affordable Housing Commission. So the efforts of all of you and Michelle to take the lead on getting this forward when she was on City Council, those are really important aspects of this. And the affordable housing study that the city and the university partnered on several years ago. And so there's a lot of people that have been working on this stuff and moving it forward. And NOAA, the Disabilities Commission as well, has been a very important part of all this, for sure.
yeah.
To that end, is there a communication plan in place to help share what the possibilities will be here to the broader community and network and help them understand both its connection and also what would be available?
As far as the units themselves, Shauna, no. I mean, the city doesn't have a communications plan in place for this, to answer that question.
I'm just wondering if we want to think about putting something together to connect on important elements that we were just highlighting, like the universal design components, the quantity, the price point, those kind of pieces, whether that'd be beneficial, both connecting it with the work of these teams and this leadership, but also for the public and their knowledge and awareness.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Do we want to wait and maybe after we hear a little bit about the Woda Cooper project, we could an announcement or something could go out about that one specifically, and then maybe once we're a little bit farther along and know more of the details for the University Estates, a second one. I don't know. What do people think? Do we want to do a single statement with information about both, or two different ones?
I would suggest at a minimum, we make sure that both of them are through City Council first.
Right.
So especially the WODA one needs an annexation. So that's the first step that's the step that we're working on right now, is getting it through the annexation process, and then they'll be working on their permits. But we should be. That's going well right now. The city's planning commission just reviewed it. Their responsibility is to make a recommendation for the zoning for the real estate that's being annexed in, and they met on Thursday, and I believe they're forwarding a recommendation to City Council that the real estate be zoned R3, which is multi-unit residential, which will enable this project to move forward as planned by Woda Cooper. Joe, is your sound working now?
I believe it is. Can you hear me now?
It is, yeah.
Great. I actually had another equal program open, and I thought to myself, I bet the mic was hijacked by that other program that was not Zoom, which seems to happen. So, well, thank you for allowing me to present today a little bit about our project. It is actually sort of a two-phase project being built at once for 107 units total of affordable housing. Based on our market studies, it's amazing how, both the market study that was done, obviously, or a study that was done by the university and the city already, our market study shows that you could build about 4 or 5 of these projects and still not even begin to make a dent in the affordable housing demand, specifically because our housing addresses two things. Obviously, it addresses the affordability, but it also addresses appropriate aging in place, other aspects of universal design. It achieves green design. These will be LEED certified properties, and individuals living in these units have to meet some specific criteria, i.e., for example, these cannot be just rented by students. They actually have to be rented by a member of a household that actually has a verifiable income with a job or a resource for the income, and they cannot be a full-time student. So that there's some really good cautionary safeguards in that really help. I figured since the number one question always comes up, what is the affordable housing? Who does it meet the demand for? And our housing is targeted towards those who earn an income of $14,800 up to, let's see here, I'm looking at the chart right now. For a family of four, it would be $56,400. So, it's very easy to see in a combination of households, 1, 2, 3, and 4 person in size, a single parent, who has a couple kids, where do they find good, high quality housing? And when you talk about workforce, this is, our upper end matches right under the workforce housing threshold in many ways. So, and what we're really seeing out there right now is there's so many people that work jobs in that 14,000 to 56,000 bracket. It's pretty amazing who our housing ends up serving the needs of. Additionally, as we had presented to NOAA and the Disabilities Commission, we're really grateful to be able to say we go well above and beyond code minimums. So there are 12 fully accessible units, in addition to some sight and hearing impaired units that are at the property, as well as all of our ground floor units are roll-in, ADA design friendly. However, even the upper floor units still have all those criteria in place, all the architecture built in place. We, as a company, we're 30 years old. Some people know us for our work nearby, obviously in Nelsonville or Beaumont Green. But we've got over 150 properties in our portfolio just in Ohio, and most of them are actually Appalachia, Ohio properties. And what, we don't build, flip, sell. Our model is a little different. We're build, hold, sustain, manage long-term, and treat it as an investment. We own every property we've built in that 30 years. So that's over 300 properties. And we manage our properties, which we've learned a lot from that management process because of the fact that we've learned that you build things into it, i.e. every bathroom gets blocking put in behind the walls in case somebody needs an accommodation for grab bars later and they can request it. A lot of our kitchens have multi-height countertops or removable sink fronts. Again, adaptable to keep a tenant long-term stable in our community and keeping them, we're very mission driven as a developer. We don't do retail and we don't do a lot of other segments that are out there. And our portfolio is affordable housing. So we're very focused in on the needs of this segment that we serve, which is always that 30 to up to 80% AMI mix. I can share a preliminary site plan if that's of interest here. That'll give you just at least an idea about how the development may come about. And I say may only because it actually, we have to go through planning commission. We've got some work to do, obviously. We've been in dialogue with Paul and his team, which has been really great. But right now, as we're planning it at the corner of Plains and Lurig Road, or 682 and Lurig Road, is to straddle an existing beautiful pond that's there both visually. It's got some natural element to it, but it's also a stormwater collection facility for a greater part of a stormwater system through there. So we're using it as a natural asset and sort of straddling 51 units on one side and 56 units on another side. We're bringing corners or parking area portions of the parcels up out of the floodplain to make sure that everything is at least 1 foot above flood level. So we have no concerns there. And then there are some connecting trails and things we're working on to make sure that these things sort of feel cohesive in the end. They'll have adequate on-site bike parking, fitness center, community space, some education and outreach space. We'll have an on-site manager's office, on-site maintenance facilities, all the things that we feel are really important to that long-term sustainability of all the communities we own. We're very, in tune with providing things like recycling, not just garbage removal. And so really we're trying to make a very cohesive, self-sustaining or sustainable footprint project Our goal on this project, talking to the architects just last week, is going to be LEED Silver or higher. So that's another good thing, which means, that the buildings are all going to be an investment of, materials and things that are done in a smart way to be a minimum of a 30-year lifespan or longer just out the gate initially. So we use a lot of better than average products than even I think, student housing or market rate developers may use. A lot of thicker gauge materials, a lot more sustainability in our development. We are working with the folks over at HapCap and have had a really good discussion with Jesse about potentially even routing the bus directly onto the property. I know we are at least on to 2 existing bus lines already with some stops right across and in front of the property, but we've talked about the ability to potentially even have the vehicle come right on and have a designated spot in the parking area or along the drive aisle, which would be, again, just an even better next step. And then as well as the on-demand and kind of the paratransit lines, we're working on designating those pickup spots as well, because those will also be extended on here, which is, again, another betterment for any of the on-demand components for those with special needs. The actual rent ranges, what we're looking at right now, is as little as for a 30% AMI qualified tenant would be $230 on a 1-bedroom apartment, up to $850 on a 3-bedroom apartment. So that would that kind of gives you an idea of the scope and threshold of where we are today as far as affordability goes. Those rents in the affordable ranges obviously do sort of flex and flow a little bit plus minus as HUD sets your AMIs every year. So as those demographics sort of trend, so would the rent and the affordability. But that's kind of a project in a kind of a nutshell. So I'd entertain some questions at this point, if you have any, and looking forward to both keeping this commission up to date. We would actually really like the ability to work with you on kind of putting out any sort of announcement or press release or those kinds of things, because I think one of the most crucial things is we make sure that people who need this housing the most, who are right in Athens, get access to this housing once it is available. And generally what we see is, while market studies and banks, et cetera, require 6-month lead times be put in a pro forma to lease up a project like this, I bet we'll have a project like this leased up in 30 days or less, just given the strength of the market is pretty significant.
I have a clarification question.
Sure.
I wasn't following along a little bit, I believe, because I thought that there was a property you were working on where the houses were available for purchase. And I think the project that you were just discussing was more for rent. So am I understanding that there are 2, as I just suggested, and you were?
We are only a rental development. I think Paul was discussing earlier a different developer's with some for sale.
And do you have examples then of what kind of qualifications you put in place to ensure that it does meet for our affordable housing needs in Athens and not specifically for students? How does language get applied into your protocol to look for that?
So when an individual actually comes in and does an application, we have to do a background and credit verification process. So they have to actually list their forms of employment. A compliance team at our office, we have specifically people who are trained in that and who are familiar with fair housing laws, actually go through and determine the source of the income, who the employer is. They verify any bank assets or background assets. Additionally, there is boxes actually on the application that you check if you are full-time or part-time student in any form. And if there is an issue, obviously that's a under perjury or oath issue. Because there is a tax credit involved as well, the state of Ohio does additional background monitoring on this as well. And so we have to keep active compliance files on all of our tenants.
So there could be students maybe that do qualify. They're a local student, single family, whatever whatever it may be, where they're trying to better themselves through education. They meet the qualifications through their employment and other facets. So the pre-qual process takes that into an account. And
yes, so right now under fair housing law and federal laws, specifically for tax credit related housing, the head of household cannot be a full-time student. They can be a part-time student. But if an individual, say it's a couple, one of them may be a student, they would still be able to qualify living with the other individual. They could not count as the head of household, however, as a full-time student. But if it was a couple and say it was their child who was going to school or something, there's nothing that prohibits that.
Thank you.
Yep. And there is some additional safeguards in place too with those familiar with the regulated tax credit housing industry, is that, you can't just move in and out of units. Everybody must qualify. If somebody were to ever say, hey, my relative would want to move in or something, the entire household has to go through a full re-review and recertification, reapplication process. You can't sublease, you can't sublet. So there is a lot of really good safeguards in place on that. And that's how we just, make sure that the housing meets the needs of those who need it the most. And they, have legitimate incomes and, all the other kind of regulatory things in it.
Do you guys accept CUD?
Do we accept that? Could you repeat your question?
Do you guys accept CUD?
So I believe your question would probably be related to like a HUD Section 8 voucher. In this case, we cannot prohibit or deny somebody from applying who may have a voucher. However, they still have to go the tax credit compliance review. So they would still have to have adequate income for the unit they are leasing. They would still have to be able to pass a background check, inclusive of a credit check and a criminal history check. And then we would have to consider what the size of that household is, and all the members of a household undergo that whole review process, not just the one individual. So it's kind of a complicated question. We do have a handful of people in some of our properties that do have HUD vouchers. In fact, a number of disabled or senior residents. We've had a number of seniors in more recent years who have, lost money in the marketplace or means or jobs, et cetera, who are elderly that are on some form of assistance.
I have a question for you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Susan Barchi. I'm a local real estate agent in the Athens market. With these units, you said recreational space. So do you include, is there going to be a playground and green space in this area for children? And is that something, is there room enough for a park in the land that you are purchasing or using?
Yeah, so we are only purchasing a portion of the farm site, and currently right now we've got kind of a rec trail or walking trail going around the pond to connect everything. We've been looking at, can we get enough flat area to do a little bit of a small playground, but we don't have any type of big park-like setting. We wouldn't also want to unnecessarily maybe duplicate anything that's already in the community or nearby. And so we are looking at a number of different options when it comes to that. I would say that probably what you will see is about 40% of our units end up leased to those who are a little bit older in age. We often find that a lot of senior households over age of 60 tend to take up a fair number of the units, probably about 40% of the units. Excuse me. For the remainder, though, for the other family unit, for when you do have families, we do see some people in there. Now, as far as like amenity space goes, beyond that, we usually end up with a community room that we can also use as a classroom setting for educational courses and some offerings we usually do in our property, like, for those that may be considering moving on to eventually buying a house, what it means to get your credit or financing in order for eventually owning your own home and moving on beyond just apartment living. We've also had some really good things like nutritional classes, visiting nurses association programming. There's a lot of things that we've tried to work with, bringing in some smaller programming to the properties, especially in the way of health and nutrition and fitness has been a big thing lately. I know at one of our properties, it's been a real big hit lately since COVID-19 about integrating and using technologies just like we're using right now, things that we probably all take for granted that a number of people don't know simply how to do. So it's been a really good thing for them.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions about the Water Cooper development plan? Susan, you look like maybe you were going to say something else.
No, I think I'll wait till everybody gets annexed and we have more questions.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming and just sharing this information with us, Joe. And I definitely look forward to hearing how the progress goes. I'll hear about it here as well as in City Council.
Yep, and probably an optimistic timeline for us would be to go, complete the annexation process somewhere in the winter here, around the first of the year, hopefully, and moving into, the full plan review here in late winter and spring, so that we could break ground somewhere in very late spring, early summer, say May or June-ish. And it takes about a 13-month construction period on this project. So that we would be able to, move tenants in the nicer weather. Again, I think really keeping in touch with this commission is imperative to especially get the word out, the success of a project. We always say, one of the real good things is you really shouldn't be able to differentiate between this and any other project in town. And in fact, I dare to say that most of the recent tax credit projects you can really find that are new construction will exceed expectations and look even better than a typical market rate endeavor that might be in the area. So we look forward to it, and we look forward to giving you any updates, or if you have any questions, please let Paul know, and we can always, make another appearance here or just even give you written updates or progress reports along the way.
Thank you. Were there any other questions for Paul about either of the projects? Then, are there any other announcements, other business that people would like to bring up, discuss, chat about? Okay. Then I guess the next thing we need is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Shauna. And a second. Did you second by raising your hand, Susan? Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I was muted. This is Michelle.
Hi, Michelle. Sorry, go ahead. Michelle?
Sorry. Well, before you adjourn, I just wondered, so the composition of the board seems to be changing. Sorry, I was on mute. I apologize.
Okay.
The composition of the board seems to be changing, and I still feel we lost our banker quite a few months ago, correct?
Correct.
Right, that economic development is resigned. Did I hear that? No?
Effective sometime in October. And so
Correct.
I think we're going to have.
Okay. So I think we need to kind of Okay.
Yeah, Susan has ideas for a banker, and then we're going to check with Molly at the
Yeah.
Economic Development Council. I will reach out to her to see if she would serve on the commission.
Okay.
Does that answer your questions, or is there something else?
I wonder if we have somebody who actually lives in the city, if it would be an interesting addition to have somebody. That's okay. That's okay. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're breaking up, so we're missing some of what you're saying.
What happened? We good? I'm okay.
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay.
And we can chat later, and I can fill you in on the parts you missed earlier.
Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Another. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, so we had a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor? Next meeting, regular time, and back here. Thanks so much, everyone. It's good to see you.